walk of the wild ones, into the woods and the darkness, rebirth the ways of the ancient ones.
Welcome, dear one, to the Emilie Alexina podcast. I'm Emilie, and I'm interested in finding and nourishing our highest human potential. I believe humans have much more beauty and goodness to share with each other and with nature, much more than we have expressed in recent centuries, although we have seen glimpses of it. I'm excited about our future. On this podcast, you will hear mine and other stories on themes like motherhood, birth, holistic healing, spiritual healing, education, and farming. Support my work by rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. Also consider making a financial donation via the link in the show notes. I'm currently saving for new microphones. Music is by Sutherland.
Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness, let love light the way to feed the soil of changing time.
Okay, hello friends. I'm going to try this new way of recording a little vlog or podcast episode in my car while my kids are in their MMA fighting wrestling class. I just adjusted my seat and steering wheels so that the camera is kind of in the sort of right angle, and hopefully that's not going to be too much of a challenge to adjust afterwards. And just on a side note of like mom and mothering, I used to be that mom who wanted to like sit and watch my kids do all their activities because I just find it so interesting to watch them learn, and I want to learn fighting and self-defense as well. And now I'm the mom with something better to do, and I could never understand those moms before who had, errands to run, or I could understand them, but I just thought it's so interesting and I just want to watch my kid. So yes, now I'm the one going to try to do some work and record a podcast. We are still kind of recovering from a cold we had 2 weeks ago. I feel like the eclipse was really intense, and this feels kind of like, I remember when we got the COVID symptoms that it took me like 3 or 4 weeks, like a month afterwards to recover. I was just really tired for a long time. This isn't as long, but feels similar, where it was like a flu and just fatigue, and I'm getting better at just resting when I need to rest. It's one of the benefits of not working for someone else or having like a 9-to-5 job, or of the kids going to school, is that we can ebb and flow with the ebb and flow of life more organically. And sometimes, of course, then, there's the pressure of making enough money or getting enough work in or enough school in. And I'm kind of working to radically listen to my inner voice and also come into trust and come into flow. And I think what this does, long term, this is my plan, is that I won't get burnout later on. And I know sometimes in the menopausal years, a lot of this like motherhood burnout can catch up to women and cause lots of health problems in their menopausal years and even later. So I'm kind of in this for the long haul. This is work that I'm interested in doing for the rest of my life because I love it. And so I'm going to do it in a way that I love it. And on that note, I highly recommend, I've talked about this podcast a lot, but the Bella Lively show is a great podcast. And she just posted an episode about aligned business. This was a class that she did that was about having your inner voice be the CEO of your business. Like 100% your business is being led by your inner voice. And this is how she does her business. And it's like flourishing and abundant. And how when she works with clients and helping them connect with their inner voice, that's also what their clients say. And so I'm trying, especially as a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner, part of my work, half of the portion of the work is helping people connect to their deep subconscious self, to their higher self, their inner voice. And the inner voice always has so much deep, beautiful wisdom and advice to give, but how many people are actually acting on it. And of course, the benefits of the sessions happen when we listen to our inner voice and we take our own deep, wise advice that is curated, individually for us. And so my main reason for coming on today is sharing about a recent session that I had with my friend Lena, Qhht. She and I have been exchanging sessions since the summer, just as a way to kind of improve our own skills and also offer each other our own healing, journey. And because personally, I wouldn't even be able to afford monthly Qhht sessions, $400 a month. It is a lot. And I do understand for all of you listening and anyone who's interested that it is a lot of money, especially at these tight economic times. And usually I recommend my clients that they'd have sessions about once a year. But it has been very, very interesting to be working monthly with Lena. And, I'm looking maybe in the future to offer some kind of package for people where they can get monthly sessions and we can work more long term, because it's also very interesting for me as a practitioner to support someone in accessing different past lives, different areas of their consciousness, and see how all these puzzle pieces come together. And so for me, the last session was very interesting. I had a long list of questions this time that I haven't had the past 2 or 3 sessions with Lena. My personal questions were a shorter list. It was kind of just like fatigue from postpartum and opening up to explore different things. In the fall, I had questions about my dad, my father, and I saw a very interesting lifetime. I don't know if I've spoken about it, but it was an Essene lifetime. And I was actually married to my dad in a past life. And but that's not the theme of this video. So if you're interested in hearing that story, let me know and I will share more about it. Sometimes I'm not sure if I should be sharing my personal stories or more about my clients, but I don't know. I think it's useful and I want to share them. I think that my insights about how the sessions then affect my life and how I applied the information and the shifts that I've had have been very interesting. So for example, there was one session where I had questions about my mother-in-law and how to soften some of the dynamic that I have with her and warm it up a little bit, because it's been like an internal kind of struggle as to how to connect with her. And, the wild thing is that since that session, I kind of see her in a whole different light, and it has softened, and my inner experience of her has softened and warmed up without her even changing too much about, how she lives life or who she is. And it has just taken a level of stress and like family dynamics off of my shoulders that I almost didn't know was accessible. So for me, the subtle changes from my Qhht sessions have been subtle so far, and I am interested in kind of ramping it up and seeing what kind of miraculous changes can occur, because I know that they are possible with this work. So and I've seen it in other people's lives, in my clients' lives, and I'm kind of looking for it even in my own life and sharing the journey with you. I think I did go more into detail about that past life, but I will summarize it here. It might be useful. Instead of accessing a past life experience that I had with my mother-in-law, I saw myself having a similar behavior to her. So I accessed the life of a Native American medicine woman who, when she got older, she was heartbroken from losing her husband very early on, like a few months after their wedding and after conceiving their child. And that heartbreak kind of festered in her heart, and she allowed herself to get like cold and withdrawn from people. And she ended up kind of like living far away from her village and still doing her healing work, but obviously it wasn't as potent as it could have been if her heart had actually been mended and warm and light and bright for the people that she was working with. And when after the death scene in that Lifetime on the Other Side, she actually that woman saw her husband, and he was like, what are you doing? Like, we were going to get back together in another lifetime. You were going to see me after death. Like, life is so short. You didn't need to like carry this heartbreak and allow it to influence others' relationships. And kind of what I saw was that I got to see from another perspective the dynamic between the villagers and that medicine woman, that she was cold, so they got cold, and everyone got cold, and then there was all this unsaid stuff. And the message from my higher self was it would have just taken one person to be warm, to kind of like heat and melt all this coldness, and that, to not answer to cold with to cold, but to answer to it with warmth. And of course, I don't know if my mother-in-law is actually cold. My in-laws are from a different culture. They're Russian. And I think sometimes that culture clash is one of the hardest things. And sometimes it's like just my own stories and interpretations of certain behaviors, and also like giving them more power and drama than there needs to be. And so from that story and perspective, just staying in warmth and not going into like defense mode in my heart, it's been a subtle shift, but it has completely changed my life, where family interactions are so much more relaxed for me now. And so this recent session had to do with my mom. And I've been working with this theme of the mother, my whole life, as everyone. But especially since having kids, it kind of brought up like, having my own children. I remember when I've had my first daughter, it brought up so much, especially in postpartum. Well, I feel like I wanted so much more from my mom than what she was giving me at the time. And I didn't know how to voice that, or I didn't even know that need existed. Also, having your own children means you get to like mother how you wish you could have been mothered. And so you kind of evaluate your journey and your relationship with your mom, the things that she did, and you try to do it better. And the relationship with my mom was hard for many years. And I guess for some backstory, I'm the eldest of 4, and my 3 other siblings were born within 5.5 years of my birth. So my mom had 4 children within 5.5 years, which is bonkers. Like, if you have had a child, you know. And now that I have 3, oh man, I actually feel it's only since having 3 kids that I can even have a taste of what she went through. My father is also kind of narcissistic and became emotionally abusive and wasn't very present for her while she was having her children and in postpartum. She went back to work when I was 3 months old, and I went to daycare at 3 months old. If you've ever seen a 3-month-old baby, like, that is just a heartbreaking thought. Women in the US kind of have to do this because they don't have the maternity leave like we do in Canada and other countries. I haven't had maternity leave since my first daughter, so I understand the pain of not having money and just choosing to stay home with your babies. But with my daughter, I just could not be separated from her. And I felt that with all of my children. And that's why I homeschool them. So I think there was a lot of like pain there, a lot of subconscious pain, and pain from her side as well. And so anyway, growing up, things with my dad were not pretty, and I remember being 8 years old and thinking they would divorce because of the fighting that was in the house, and that lasted basically another 8 years until the actual divorce when I was 16. And then I went off to university, and it was still, very tumultuous with my parents, my relationship with my parents and their relationship between themselves for many years, because they were fighting over the divorce. So I feel like I went through my teen years and early adult years without parenting. And, okay, looking back, that's maybe not fair. I want to share this episode so that if ever my parents or anyone is listening, that they will not come away hating me for it. That's been kind of my intention, but I also really want to share my process because I think it's very valuable. So it wasn't without parenting. I remember in university, for example, to give my mom some credit, I spent a lot of time talking with her on the phone, but you know, she was going through her own emotional journey and turmoil and finding herself with all this stuff happening with my dad. And anyway, I don't want to get into too much to the family drama. Basically, I was also very mean, I think, because I didn't get what I needed. So I was very mean to my mom, very critical for many years. And honestly, it's only now that I have 3 children and I can get a taste of what she went through that I realize how much she did and how much she was handling. Like, she even said herself that she was in survival mode for 10 years. So I've been working on this idea of honoring my parents. My friend Chelsea, what's her handle now? She changes her handle a lot. The Energy School is, that's part of her work. And I want to get her on the podcast talking about honor. And so I've been working with this idea of honoring our parents and really seeing what they went through. And for me, honoring, it means acceptance, but it doesn't also mean that we can't challenge or evaluate, you know, what happened, so that we can improve going forward. So there is kind of this balance. And so all this to say that with this regression, that's kind of the backstory, one of my questions was, who am I beyond the body and mind? And I've been kind of thinking about this because in yoga, they talk about this, like our self is kind of composed of the body, the mind, the mental mind, which would include like our personality and our psyche, and I would argue our emotional body, and then the like soul or spiritual essence that is behind that. And in the theories of past lives, we say that the psyche and emotional body and some of these traumas, like they do get carried between lifetimes if things are not resolved. And so I see this most often with like traumatic deaths or deaths where the person is left confused. And on the other side, when there's confusion, that will be brought into next lifetimes. And that's where we can kind of go back with quantum healing and look at what happened and integrate that information, digest the emotions, get perspective from the higher self, and integrate all of that so that we're no longer carrying those patterns and programs in our life. And so my question was, who am I beyond this body and mind? I thought I would go to maybe some cool cosmic place, you know, the birth of the soul or something like that. Lena said that she has clients spontaneously go to this place of the birth of the soul, and without even like knowing about it beforehand. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll go somewhere like that, or find out what star place I'm from or whatever. But no, I went first to my own womb. I was in my bleed at the time of the session, and to start this session, we did like a mind-heart coherence kind of intention. And my womb was just yelling at me like, hey, pay attention to me. There's magic here. Like, you need to be also coherent with the womb. And I'm also now learning about Chinese medicine and Qigong practice and kind of the energetic foundations of Chinese medicine. And they talk about the 3 dantians, which are like one at the womb, one at the heart, and one at the mind. And these are like energy pools that feed the chakras. So the chakras kind of lie on top of or feed from these energy pools, these dantians, which themselves feed from the pole, the like center line of our beings, which is where our spirit or soul is residing. And so I feel like these 3 points need to be brought into coherence, not just the mind and the heart, but the mind, the heart, and the womb, which would be like the mind, emotions, and physical body. So my womb was yelling at me. So I first went to the womb, and I just felt this void. It was so peaceful. And the Chinese medicine also talks about the woo wee. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry if I'm botching that, but this like void from which everything comes. And to me, that's like, it's like the womb, you know, the womb that is just waiting to be impregnating, the womb of potential. And it felt like a portal. It felt like I could step in any direction and access anything, and also that anything could be birthed from this space. It was like infinite potential, infinite accessing of anything. It felt really cool. And I'm kind of now going back right before I fell asleep. Ideally, I would be like sitting in meditation and having a practice for that, but I'm often nursing my baby. And so what I'll do is in my mind, I'll visualize myself sitting in meditation and I go to like these different places wherever I'm guided to. I just go and I meditate there while I'm lying down with my baby right before falling asleep. So that's kind of a cheat sheet for you mamas. And then I felt called to go to my mother's womb and to go to the place right before the body was really being formed. So it was like you know, a few moments after conception. And I've read different theories as to when the soul incarnates into the baby's body. There are so many different theories. So it's very interesting. Some people will be like, well, it's like a 2 months gestation, or it's at 7 months gestation. In Waldorf education, Rudolf Steiner says that it happens at 21 years old when the brain is fully formed. That is when we can be properly, fully incarnated into the whole human body, which I also find very interesting. And I actually align more to that. And I align more to the fact that, and if we don't go through a holistic childhood, our soul will have a hard time, our like full true essence will have a hard time fully incarnating into the body, which is interesting. So if you want to hear more about kind of Steiner's perspective on that, let me know in the comments and I will talk about that. But what I was feeling was that I was kind of there. It was like my first experience being in the womb, but I could like come and go. And I've seen that quite a bit in research. And even with my clients, it's like when the baby's like first being formed in the womb, there's a coming and going of the spirit from the spirit world to the womb, kind of getting familiar. And this was even before my mom found out I was pregnant, or found out she was pregnant with me. And I know that it was kind of a hard news for her to accept. She was already married to my dad, but she had a career, and I think she was excited to work for a few more years and get herself a bit more established before getting pregnant. So I was a bit of a like early surprise. I was born a year after their wedding, and so this essence I came in with was feeling into like my experience of being there without any influence from the parents. And I just felt so excited and elated and so much love for this woman who was giving her body to grow my body. So much love for her that it felt like I just wanted her to be so happy. I felt so much love and gratitude for this being. And I have personally felt this energy when I tune into my babies, when I'm carrying them, when I'm pregnant myself. And I mean, I don't know, I would argue that maybe most souls feel this way, you know, no matter how the pregnancy is happening. I don't know, that's likely not true. I would have to do more research. And, you know, I know that there are women who choose to end pregnancies, or pregnancies that don't stick. So there's likely, you know, a variety, spectrum of different emotions and lessons and stories coming in. But that's what I was feeling, just this elation and this love for this woman. And then I could feel like her emotions and her fears and her things coming in, the tensions with the relationship with my dad, kind of coming in and already starting to affect like the personality and the mind of my being. And then the birth itself, my personal birth was quite traumatic, where I was pulled out with forceps and vacuum. And my mom afterwards almost died of an allergic reaction to codeine. It's part of the reason that when I got pregnant, I decided the hospital is not the way for me. And I had this story in my mind that I kind of didn't want to come back to earth. And that's why my birth was so hard, that I was like forced and pulled onto earth, and I didn't want to be back. I was resisting. And so it's kind of been this like underlying subconscious story I have about myself that like I don't really want to be here in the first place. And so it was huge for me. It was really huge for me to see the shift of like this elation, this excitement of coming back to Earth. Also because of that Native American past life, which I think was the one right before this experience, I was really happy to be back in Canada and back on this land. Just so happy to be back with the energetics of the land and to rediscover and meet the land again. But yeah, it's been an interesting rewriting of that story of arrival. Another thing is that I could feel, so Dolores Cannon writes about this in her books of In Between Lives, kind of what happens in between lives, where we go. I do want to do a book review actually, and different hypnotherapists have talked about, you know, what people see in between lifetimes, and it's pretty consistent. If there's been like a traumatic life or traumatic death, often there's like a healing space with beings that help souls heal from those experiences. There's like a learning space where you get to learn and plan what you want to experience next. Sometimes you get to create contracts with like your people in your soul family and what you want to experience before reenacting the play or acting out the play. And what I felt, because I didn't go to that place, but I felt it was kind of accessible, but it was more important to see other things. And what my higher self said was that the birth, in that way was not necessarily intended to be that traumatic, and the childhood and early adulthood, like that early phase of life, was also not intended to be as hard as it was emotionally. And I think I'm quite a sensitive being, and that's why it was really hard. It was really hard for me. And of course, I mean, I connect with people who have stories that are so much more difficult and that have a lot more pain to work through. So this isn't to say that my story is worse than anyone else's at all. I think that humanity is at a place where most of us are traumatized. Most of us have been birthed in a way that that was traumatic, and we're raised in ways that, you know, are not like fully uplifting of like our full soul's potential, just the way our education system is set up, the way that our religions are set up. There's a lot of work for all of humanity. So I'm not saying that my story is unique in any way. I just want to share that journey, because I think it could be helpful for other people to put things into perspectives and to understand their own life stories. And I actually think in some of my sessions, I might be interested in guiding people to come to that place, to come to their birth story. So a little tangent here. I also find that I've noticed some clients will only go to places in childhood, will only visit this lifetime, because that's where the work has to be done. For myself, and sometimes for others too, I think we can explore past lives, because it's easier to explore past lives and things that are a little bit disconnected from our current lifetime before addressing like the trauma of the current lifetime. And so in my case, I have like accumulated positive stories and positive skills that I feel like I have tapped into and I can apply to this lifetime, that have charged me up and energized me and given me the strength, the like emotional strength, to look at this lifetime and really heal my birth and my childhood. I'll have sometimes people say in sessions or in the interview process, you know, they'll talk about their parents, and we sometimes talk about our parents as being like the... Okay, a little shift of scenery. This is actually like 3 or 4 days later that I am now finishing off the points from these stories. I just re-listened to that first half hour and I think I was kind of touching on a lot of points and going off on a lot of tangents. So the last little point I was talking about was how people in the interview process and, even in day-to-day life, just talking to friends and family, how much we talk about our parents and how much we talk about them like influencing us. I've had a few people say things like, well, this is how my parents are or were, this is how my childhood was, that means this is how I am, kind of saying like, this is how I was raised, and so like there's no changing it. And I definitely think, obviously, that our parents, our mothers and fathers, or the people who raise us, have a huge impact on the development of our personality, our mind, our emotional bodies, and even on our souls to a certain extent. If we think about past lives and the idea of past lives, if it's true, my husband kind of even always says that, like, if it's really true. But if it's true, then we've had many parents, right? We've had many mothers, many fathers, many grandparents, so many different ones. We've had good ones, we've had bad ones, we've had some who left us early, we've had some who were ill. We've had, and it hasn't always been like these two people who were our parents. And so in that sense, yes, our parents kind of like really shape and mold a lot of our, like I said, our being, our mind, our emotional habits, our body in the first 20 years. And then, if you think, as I mentioned earlier, according to Rudolf Steiner, that by the age of 21, 24, 25, I've seen different numbers, when the soul is fully incarnated, when the brain is fully formed, we can fully individuate and become ourselves and choose a different trajectory. We kind of like become conscious and wake up and choose a different trajectory. And what I've noticed is that, at least in my life, and I think this kind of touches upon the Saturn return around the age of 29. So if we say that, say at 24, 25, the brain is fully developed, and then we get the Saturn return at 29, I think like that is when we kind of awaken and get the opportunity even to individuate and see our parents differently and see our childhood differently. And so I think that I think that obviously quantum healing and this kind of meditation exploration is one great way to be able to look at these events, even connect to parents and childhoods from other lifetimes, and not give so much power to the childhood of this lifetime defining who we are and who we think we are. There's kind of a lot more leeway in that. And I come from like a background of yoga, and in yoga they say that, the point of being on earth is moksha or enlightenment or merging, yoga, yoking and merging with the divine, with God. And a big part of that is kind of understanding our identification as being with Source and with the One and with Divine Father, Mother. And that means in some ways dropping our identification with our parents. And this has helped me quite a bit in navigating the relationships with my parents. It has allowed me to release and forgive and understand and honor and have compassion for my mom, and also, and the same for my dad. And we have distanced ourselves. My dad and I for 2 years, and it was up and down for many years. For 2 years, we haven't spoken. He has cut the relationship, and this perspective, this kind of work allows me to put these things in place in a way that I can really live my life in full joy, with full love and understanding and compassion to them. And also, I guess in that way, kind of setting boundaries, but I'm not really big into like the whole boundary thing. I think that when we come into understanding, we come into presence and love, and it automatically kind of sets these boundaries, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that's helpful, and that's some kind of weird tangent I went on. But that being said, I don't think that our parents have to define who we are. You know, I had a client once in my early days back in Montreal, and she herself was in her mid 70s, and she was talking a lot about her mother who was in her mid 90s. And I guess she was taking care of her. You know, we kind of, the karma we're working out is with the people that we spend a lot of our time with, and our family members or close people often will be triggering us and helping us grow. And this woman just spent a lot of time talking about her mom, about things in the past, about things that were currently happening. And I thought to myself in that moment 8 years ago, I do not want to be 75 and complaining about my parents having like mommy and daddy issues. Like, I want to just clear that, figure it out. So yeah, one of my big approaches is to connect to divine mother, father, to rest on them and to put like more power into their hands than into my parents' hands. And in that way, there's a lot less pressure on the relationship with my parents. And yeah, it's been very beautiful. So if you want an idea for a meditation that you can do, I've been meaning to post a reel about this, but this setting is kind of maybe more interesting. What I like to do is I do these deep breaths, inhale, exhale. I imagine like light going through the center of my being. And on the inhale, because I feel myself rising, I'm bringing my consciousness, my awareness, like all the way to the middle of the universe, which in this setting, I feel is like Divine Father, like in the sky, like Father Sky. And then as I exhale, I feel myself like fall down, ground down, and I bring that all the way down through me and down deep into the earth, to the earth's core, to Divine Mother. And I don't really know what I'm doing, but it just feels good. I feel like just so connected to Divine Mother, Divine Father, and of course, like the divine masculine, feminine are everywhere. Sometimes I think of like the inside of the universe as actually being feminine, and maybe the fireball at the inside of the earth is masculine. I don't know if it matters, but that's what I feel. So I inhale Divine Father, exhale Divine Mother, and it's like this deep connection to those two polarities of the one source. Really, it is one thing. And yeah, relying more on them than on my human parents. And this also affects how I mother my children. And I even tell them, this was something that came up a bit more before, and I maybe need to bring it back up again to remind them, because these lessons have to always be reminded in the kids. But I used to tell, especially my eldest, that like Mother Earth is the ultimate mother, and we are like brothers and sisters and cousins with all the animals and plants on the earth. And that, you know, Mother Earth or like Divine Mother is my daughter's ultimate mother, not really me. This might be controversial, and I did plan to have like a whole podcast episode devoted to this, but it kind of comes in along these lines of a healing this karma, this kind of stuff with my mom. Being able to like release my anger and frustration that I carried for many years, and be able to really just see her for like who she is and all that she has to offer. And she really has a lot to offer, especially as a grandma, that I didn't even see before, because I was like so frustrated and caught up in all the things that I think she wasn't doing. So yeah, with my girls, I'd say that like I'm just, you know, their temporary mom, helping them through their childhood, you know, as best I can, so that they can grow into adults and live their own life. And Divine Mother is like their ultimate mother, who will be with them for their whole life, right? Okay, I'm going to talk about this now. I also plan another podcast episode about this, but if you want me to dive into these topics more specifically, like there were some interesting conversations around this mother piece. My daughter once told my brother, like, do you know mom's not my real mom and grandma's not mom's real mom? Like Mother Earth is everybody's mom. My brother was like, whoa, this is too much. Like, that's not true. Like, whoa. It was an interesting thing, but my brother knows I'm, a little bit out there on some things. And she was young, I think, and still kind of figuring things out. So talking about it in an interesting way. So this is also one of the reasons I do this is, I may not always be around. Like something might happen to me, and I think about this quite a bit. Like if I were to pass for whatever reason, like if there's an accident or something, how can I prepare my children? Like one of my fears is that they won't be prepared and I will have left them nothing behind. Some people think about like leaving their kids money. I'm still working on that aspect. I want to leave them with like a spiritual foundation and a deep connection to me and to spirit, that they like won't be angry with God, I guess, if I'm taken, that they know that I trust God and life and Divine Father Mother. They will have access to me, that I will be there for them no matter what, and that they can also always rely on Divine Father Mother, even if I'm not accessible. And when they grow older, like there could be things that happen where maybe we get in a fight, or for some reason they don't want to talk to me for a few years. It's not about me as like a human, because I'm fallible. I want to really help them build a strong relationship with Divine Father Mother, and for me, I guess, to Mother Earth. And I think that will serve them in life. So I don't know. I don't know what you guys think of that. I'd love, if you let me know what you think about it. But yeah, so fully individuating and kind of releasing the idea that our parents define who we are. And one thing my inner voice said about this was, and I kind of touched upon this earlier, is that I think like the baby coming into the womb has so much love for this woman caring for them. And we want to do everything for them to be okay. And I think it's even probably in psychology, it's some kind of thing where like we need our parents to be okay when we're young because they're taking care of us. So it's a survival method. So, and as adults, as we grow up, it becomes like more of a choice. But as a child, it's a survival method to make sure that the person taking care of you is okay and happy, And I never really thought that I had this because I carried so much resentment and anger towards my mom. And I remember when I discovered Reiki, and especially Reiki, like yoga and some healing stuff and the diet stuff and the cleaning up my diet and eating organic. I was doing all of that, but it was really when I discovered Reiki that I thought, oh my God, this could heal my mom. This could help her. So my family has a story of my uncle, my mom's brother, passing away, leaving this world when he was 17. He was in Switzerland on a trip with his friends, and he was rock climbing or like climbing a mountain, going hiking, and he fell off a cliff and he died suddenly. And so this is kind of why I have this idea in the back of my mind, like anything could happen, you could die suddenly and just go. And it's not funny, that's like a nervous laugh. And it was really hard on my family, and I know that my mom carries a lot of grief and a lot of stuff around that. And I thought with Reiki that like I could heal her of all of that. And that was, I guess, one of the first times where I was really like, oh, I want to help you, I want to heal you, I want to save you. I guess, it's like that hero complex. sometimes it's easier to like help everyone else before we help ourselves. This is the hardest work to actually do. I would say the second hardest work is working on the people close to us. So it's better to like start with this and work with strangers, and maybe one day, if people are open and willing, working with our very close people. But what came up in my inner voice was that I've been subconsciously wanting to heal her, and even my first two births with my own children like mirror my mom's birth experiences. So even the birth experience with my brother, where he was coming out like face up, facing the wrong way. Usually the baby's head comes out facing the back, but in this case, he was coming facing like basically the head towards the belly button. And my second daughter was born this way. And in the hospital at that time, and I believe they still do this, their solution to this malpositioning of the baby is to push the baby back in, turn the baby around, and then take him out. And this was like, my mom just talks about like her first two births were extremely traumatic. And, so my first birth with my daughter was kind of similar to my personal birth, where I was like misaligned, and I think they rushed the process and they pulled me out before it was really time. And with my daughter, there was like a lot of patience. There was probably some malpositioning because there was intense, crazy pain, and she had a huge bump on her head when she came out. But there was patience and, just patience to be with beautiful midwives. And I was resolved to not be going anywhere to the hospital. And so we waited it out, moved around, and baby came out smoothly. And with my second, she was born face up like my brother. And for that birth, I chose to not have any cervical checks, which is when they put their fingers in the woman's vagina to see, they can see how the baby's oriented because of the marks on the skull when they do that. And so that's how they would have known that my brother was malpositioned. And with my daughter, I refused any of those all of those interventions. And when she came out face up, pretty easy peasy. Like pushing was slightly harder than with my first, but she came out easy peasy, and the midwives were very surprised. They were like, wow, how did you do that? Like, that's usually a problem. We usually have to transfer women. I birthed that one at home. We usually have to transfer them to the hospital. They were kind of like blown away. And so to me, it's wild that the first two births of my children mirror the births that my mother had. And so my higher self was saying that I was subconsciously trying to heal things that my mom went through. Also, like kind of the tumultuous beginning of my relationship with my man, kind of resembles what my mom went through. I also gave birth to my first daughter when she gave birth to me with her first child. Like the timing of the ages was very interesting in that way. And I'm curious if this has happened for you guys in your lives. I'm very curious to know about that. And so, so basically my inner voice said that there's kind of been a subconscious program to heal some, because my mom watching me go through these things and seeing them be very similar, but outcomes being different because of different choices, does, possibly mend things for her on a subconscious level. And my inner voice basically said, like, it's time to let that go. That work of subconsciously reliving things that she went through to help her and heal her, like, you can let that go. You can sift out what's hers and what's yours. And what my inner voice suggested to do was to send Reiki healing to my mom in all these different moments, like so around the time of birth, in the pregnancy with me, even in our childhood. And I've been very connected to the mantra right now, Om Mani Padme Hum. I'm dreaming about it and just chanting it and playing the music. I love it so much. It's like a mantra of deep self-compassion and grace. And I'm using it for myself to have compassion for myself around, not mothering perfectly or as according to my ideals as I could. And I just channel and send that to that time. And we're going to see, I don't know if it makes a difference. So the message was kind of like to choose to consciously do that for her, so that's my part in whatever I can do to offer any mending or healing or soul healing. And then I can like fully live my life. I can be fully free as like a individuated, unique individual. So that was a big takeaway, you guys. And if that feels applicable to you, I encourage you to try it. I'm very curious how this kind of resonates for people. Another thing that it brought up for me was this idea of a mother's emotional state affecting baby. When I was pregnant with my first, I remember coming across, we went into like a Hindu or Krishna temple in Toronto, and the priest there was saying like, oh, you're pregnant, like congratulations, and just make sure you're happy all the time. Like just make sure you're happy. Bless you. May no one bother you. Like no one give you bad news. Here, read this Krishna book. Like you need to read these chapters. Very good for you. Very good for the baby. And I remember walking out and thinking like, how do I stay happy? Like I'm an emotional mess. I'm pregnant. I don't know, most of my pregnancies have been pretty emotionally intense. And I'm actually reading about Chinese medicine, Qigong therapy, and traditional Chinese medicine. And they do talk about this idea of the different toxins that can come to the baby in pregnancy. And it's not just like environmental and physical toxins, like from nutrients or whatever chemicals is one. And the others are emotional and spiritual toxins coming from the parents, really, or from the environment. And I got to kind of sift through that and how that affected me personally as a person in this life, by feeling into like my essence before those toxins kind of came into the being. And I think that's very interesting. I also feel like in this world, the way we're set up and in our culture, it's not known to like shield and protect women from emotional upheavals in pregnancy. And it can also, like pregnancy, I think is also an incredible opportunity for women to grow and detox on all levels and unravel themselves, to open up, to welcome babies, and then recreate themselves afterwards. So I don't think in the end, ultimately, it's all bad. But, using this technique is one example. I'm sure there are other ways we can connect to who we were before these things. And so even if we think we did that for our children, which I definitely did, I'm curious now to kind of find ways to help them sift through these things. And I can already see patterns of my kids where they have like some of my good traits and some of my bad traits, and how we can sift through that and help them reconnect to their soul essence, and how we can do that for ourselves, no matter what kind of pregnancy we experienced personally. And then, I wanted to talk about, I kind of was starting on this and jumped to something else, but talking about contracts and free will and things that are predestined. I was saying how I could feel that previous space of the soul kind of deciding their contracts before coming into earth, and then but without actually seeing it, right? I could like feel that space. I could feel that like everything had been decided and set and studied, and there was this excitement of the plan and the project, and then coming in, and then things unravel and events unravel. And like I said, in my case, a lot of the strife was was unplanned. Like, it wasn't planned that my dad would kind of make the choices and be and act how he ended up choosing to be and act. The traumatic birth was also not really intended to be that way. And I personally found that comforting, because there is this idea in like spiritual circles and even in this kind of past life stuff and in Dolores Cannon's work, that most of the things we experience on earth were like planned beforehand, before we came in. It was like, oh, if this is hard or whatever, like that was planned, that was a planned challenge. Meeting like good things like meeting our partners and what parents and family members we're going to have, what siblings we're going to have, all that's predestined. And yeah, I think that there's definitely a mix of free will and like divine will. And that there's some things that are just kind of have to unfold and unfold unexpectedly. I personally believe that my uncle's death was not really, was an accident. I've read this in Dolores's books, that some deaths are like surprise deaths. It's like an exit point that just like comes up and it's a surprise, it's a mistake, it's an accident. Most deaths are not like this from what I've seen in my research, but some are. And I feel like I connected to my uncle's death, and that's what I felt from it. And that on the other side, his soul actually carried quite a bit of guilt around what happened and how that affected the family. And so for me to be able to connect and see that some of these things were unplanned, they just happened that way. But the message from my inner voice was any of the challenges that came up, like, were just more growing opportunities and will make me a more powerful and stronger healer and like influencer for positive change in this world. And the message was that like no effort is ever lost. So even if we encounter challenges and hardships that are like unplanned from our souls and we have a really hard time going through them, what my higher self said is like no work is ever lost, and we can also heal from everything. Whether we heal in this lifetime or in other lifetimes, we can truly heal from anything that happens to us in this dimension. And I know that they're like big, heavy subjects that humans face and that people are working through. I am interested in working with people around these topics, using these methods. I don't know if I have the training, required to support people. Sometimes I believe that it's a benefit to not, have like the university things and the professional things. And then other times I feel like, whoa, I'm really being pushed to my edge. But I found that beautiful. Yeah, that even if there's unexpected, really hard challenges, nothing goes unseen. Nothing goes unseen by the divine. Nothing. And everything can be healed. I think I got to everything I wanted to say. Yeah, I did see kind of glimpses from another lifetime, another life story that did involve, suicide. And this is a topic that I do want to talk about, like suicidal ideation or suicide, and what happens to souls on the other side after making that decision. Because there's different theories, and in some of the religious circles, it's like it's definitely hugely frowned upon, and there's beliefs that souls get like hugely punished and go to hell if they make that decision. From my experience, that's not the case, and I've seen different things in Dolores Cannon's research. But I think that's kind of a big, heavy topic. I'm sorry to drop this on you guys at the last minute. I think I'm going to save that for another time, another episode. So if there's anything in here that I spoke about today that is interesting to you and you want me to kind of expand on, or you have questions or comments, I love getting all your feedback and your comments. Thank you so much. And remember that rating and commenting or reviewing the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it really helps. It helps get the views and like helps get the word out. I'm doing this because I love it, and I'm very curious to see, what can happen and where it can go, and what kind of stories and changes we can see happen in the world. I am hosting my first online group regression this Wednesday. That's April 24th, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. That'll be on Zoom. You can register for that at my website, emiliealexina.com, or send me an email or a DM on Instagram. It will be dealing around these themes that I talked about today, around birth, actually. And I find quantum healing hypnosis is often more centered around death. Like, let's see the death in the past life, because I feel like the birth affects our life, the life affects the death, and the death affects the next life, So I don't usually focus on birth in past lives, although often one of the questions that I ask people is, move to an important day if they're looking at a past life. And often they will move to the day of a birth, whether they're giving birth. Women have seen themselves as women giving birth, or men, watching their women give birth. And so, people have accessed quite a few kind of birth stories through Qhht. And there's been some beautiful healings and insights from these experiences. And so these are the kind of things we're going to talk about. We're going to do a mix of yoga and qigong to open up the body before diving into meditation and opening up our consciousness and seeing what experiences and stories can come through around the theme of birth. So either our personal birth in this lifetime or birth in other lifetimes. Those are themes that I'm very interested in exploring in a group and seeing what comes through. And if you're listening to this later, stay tuned for other group events. They'll be posted on my website, or send me an email to get yourself on a list. I don't really have an email list. I know I should. Maybe I'll start collecting emails. I don't really like the idea of sending out a letter, a newsletter or anything like that, because personally my inbox is flooded with them. But at least if you are interested in an online group regression at some point, or in person, you can send me an email with that you want that, and I will put that in a little Excel file, and I can send you an email as they come out. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the most beautiful day. I wish you to be able to hear and be deeply connected to your center of wisdom and peace, and that you have the courage and ability to act on its wisdom. Bless you.
Follow the walk of the wild ones into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood. It falls to us now to open up and taste beyond what we've been fed. Take up the phoenix fire of cleansing, change to light the path instead. Follow the walk of the wild ones into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood. It falls to us now to open up and taste beyond what we've been fed. Take up the phoenix fire of cleansing, change to light the path instead. Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness darkness, let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times. Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness, let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times. Follow the walk of the wild ones into the woods and the darkness. Rebirth the ways of the ancient ones whose tracks were washed away in blood. It falls to us now to open up and taste beyond what we've been fed. Take up the phoenix fire of cleansing, change to light the path instead. Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness, let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times. Step by step through the unknown, I'll be your light and you'll be mine. In darkness, let love light the way to feed the soil of changing times.